Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for the statement. It appears to me that one of the issues the Minister raises is with regard to timing in terms of how quickly the Workers' Party responded to some of the issues the Minister covers in his statement. Let me put that question of timing into perspective, but before I do so, let me just read out as a preamble a short remark that I made at the doorstop interview on the 26th of April, one day after the MHA ELD statement was made, and I said this: the Ministry of Home Affairs and ELD have put together a message, and I stand behind that message. Our political scene is for our people. We persuade Singaporeans of our value proposition, and we urge all Singaporeans, regardless of race, language, or religion, to judge us on our manifesto and our proposals and what we do in Parliament for all Singaporeans, not specific communities only. I think once we go down that road, you're going to have an unnecessary politicization of the public space, and we don't want that. That is not healthy for Singapore, and that's not healthy for minority communities as well. On the matter of timing, the joint MHA ELD statement was published on the 25th of April. It does not refer to Noor Deros, who is a Singaporean. It makes reference to foreigners attempting to influence the general elections. Now, this comes out on the 25th of April, and if the minister can correct me if I'm wrong, statement comes out at about 10 p.m. That's the 25th of April. On the 26th of April, the following morning at 9:30, the Workers' Party releases its statement, overnight. At 11:30 or thereabouts, there's a doorstop interview, and I make the remarks that, one of the remarks that I made include what I have just mentioned as the preamble to this clarification. So on the matter of timing, I don't agree with the Minister that we took too long. I understand Minister has an issue about the context of what was said. It could have been clearer, more unequivocal, and Minister concedes that on the 26th of April, that same day the press release of the Workers' Party was released that morning, in the evening there is a rally, and at Tampines I make what I think the Minister says are clearer remarks and statements about race and religion. So I have a disagreement with the Minister about the question of timing. Now, who was Noor Deros before these elections? I didn't know him. I'm not sure whether the Minister knew him or the Ministry knew of him, unless he was on MUIS or had served with MUIS at some point in some capacity. I'm not sure. I don't know. But as far as the WP is concerned, we don't really have an operations room or a POFMA office to monitor what foreigners or what people are saying about politics and where they may be venturing into territory which is dangerous. But in the event there is something untoward or awry, the Workers' Party is not shy of coming together and trying to resolve the issue. I'll give an example as a matter of clarification. First rally we have at Anchorvale. The rally site starts to turn dangerous because people are slipping and sliding, and the police commander on the ground is uncertain what is happening. And he says, look, we may have to shut the rally site down. So I said, let me make a remark to the crowd and ask them to keep safe, and we deal with the situation. So the point I'm making to the Minister is, if something is heading into dangerous territory, I think there are many ways for the national interest, for the government to communicate with political parties and say, look, this is not on, and we are communicating this, we need to come together, resolve it. Make that clear statement. And if the party is not prepared to make a statement, then I think the Minister is fully at liberty to make the comments that he wishes to. But I don't think it's fair to say that the Workers' Party didn't take this issue seriously. I also would like to query and clarify, I beg your pardon, Did Noor Deros break any laws? Was a police report made against him, or was it in the government's contemplation to issue a restraining order against him under Section A of the Maintenance of Religious Harmony Act? Because the Prime Minister decides to take a break from the hustings and make a statement in the national interest. So just to clarify, what considerations were on the government's mind in terms of trying to nip this issue at the bud? For the moment, these are my clarifications. Mr. Speaker, I may clarify further, subject to what the Minister says.
Minister.
So Mr. Singh, I think, has confused two different issues. The first is on Deros, and in my statement I said that the Workers' Party statement did not reject Deros's very serious conduct in asking Muslims here to support the Workers' Party on racial and religious grounds, and asking voters in Tampines to vote for Mr. Faisal Manap. I hope after this statement we can at least have common ground that what Deros did was unacceptable. And if there is common ground on what that was unacceptable, then it should have been responded to immediately, and it should have been unequivocal rejection of what Deros said. Second is foreign influence. I said that the initial statement by WP was not clear, but it got clearer when Mr. Singh gave his doorstop, and then it became quite clear after the Prime Minister had specifically called on political parties to make their position clear. Mr. Singh then clearly and unequivocally rejected Passa's statements during the rally. So I did not say that either Mr. Singh or the Workers' Party had made their position clear. On Deros, it should have been made clear. Now, I'm not quite sure why there is a reference to POFMA office or MHA or the government, or this suggestion as to why the government, should the government have communicated with a political party in the middle of the GE. Look, we are now here talking about Deros meeting with the Workers' Party's Malay candidates. According to Deros, he met with all of the Workers' Party's Malay candidates. That means Mr. Faisal Manap and 4 others. Assume that was known. Deros put up his posts on the 23rd and 24th of April, nomination day and the second day. Deros talked about his meeting with the WP. He talked about his demands. He said he would canvass support for the WP if the WP agreed to his demands, and said that people should vote for Faisal Manap. And this was after meeting Mr. Faisal Manap and Workers' Party's Malay candidates. Mr. Faisal Manap was and is the vice chairman of the WP, and if I'm not wrong, probably a CEC member as well. Mr. Faisal Manap and others need the POFMA office to tell them about their meeting with Deros and his posts. Now, then there is a larger point, more substantive point, which I've alluded to. The statement was issued on the 26th of April, WP statement. As I said earlier, it did not reject Deros's position that he would ask Muslims in Singapore to vote along racial and religious lines. Nor did it reject Deros's support for its anchor in Tampines, Mr. Faisal Manap. Instead, what it said is that no commitments, promises, or agreements had been made to Deros. That is something that you might find lawyers drafting for each other. You don't see that in political statements which ought to be clear and unequivocal. And I think Mr. Singh, if I heard him correctly, conceded that the statement could have been clearer, and I thank him for that. So it should have been squarely stated that we are rejecting all of this. And when you have when there is no clear response, it raises questions. And if you look at it logically, do we agree that what Deros said was serious? Obviously, yes. I think all of us, regardless of party affiliation, I think would agree to that. Do we agree that it required a clear and immediate rejection without any qualification? And it was important to do so. Listening to Mr. Singh just now, I think he accepts that. Now, can the lack of a clear rejection of Deros' statement be an oversight? Now look, Mr. Lau Tiak Yang has described Mr. Singh as a good politician, meaning a politician who understands politics. Mr. Lau said this last year. So the lack of clear response, a vague response, must have been a deliberate choice based on a calculation of interest. I'm just taking it point by point, a series of logical conclusions, that there is some benefit in keeping it less clear, and that Deros can swing some votes. Those who understand politics will know this. This is not rocket science. Now, that sort of calculation may bring some short-term benefits. And whatever I say about Deros also goes for PAS. But it does, as I said, long-term damage to our country. It goes against our national pledge. It goes against our multiracial deals. So being true to our pledge has to go beyond citing it during GE rallies. It must mean putting it into practice even when it's difficult to do so. Sincere belief requires acting true to the words of the pledge, even when it may cost some votes. So I wasn't going to go into any of this detail. I refrain from saying all of this bluntly in my speech. The main purpose of my speech was to say, let's come together, keep faith with our fundamentals of multiracialism, and not play identity politics. My hope and the purpose of my speech is that we will learn from what had happened, move forward as one people, Singaporeans, together agreed on the fundamentals. Close ranks when people like Deros and foreign parties like PAS try to divide us, and say and agree that we will reject such attempts immediately and clearly, even if we may calculate them to be in our short-term political interests. So let's just be clear. Today, we don't need to refer to POFMA office. We don't need to refer to the government, or the government didn't tell us. It's really what each of us is responsible for and what responsible conduct means. When your vice chairman is meeting together with the slate of candidates, and there are these demands, you don't need to be told by the government. Really, let's just, I hope we can agree on these basic points.
Mr. Singh?
Mr. Speaker, before I go into that, I don't think the Minister has answered the point about Section 8A of the MHRA and what Noor Deros, a Singaporean, said and did and how the government responded.
Thank you for reminding me, sir. I thank Mr. Singh through you. I don't want to go into future hypotheticals. As for the past, the government decided to take the approach that it has done, which is to issue a statement through MHA and ELD, and then make this ministerial statement. What might happen in the future, we'll have to assess the facts of each case.
Mr. Singh?
Thank you. Thank you for that, Minister. Indeed, there is an assessment made, and my own view on this matter is when a nobody claims that there's a set of demands that he has of a political party, one has to think of a number of factors. The Streisand effect, by raising the matter, are you actually in the heat of an election, bringing the issue to greater focus? So by dealing with it on the 23rd or 24th, points made by a certain Noor Deros who really no one knows, I certainly didn't know of him. He later on the 6th of May, accepts that the Workers' Party didn't agree to anything that he said. He also later on congratulates Prime Minister Lawrence Wong. He speaks well of the government. Ultimately, in the heat of elections, attentions are all over the place. And for an opposition party, indeed, nomination day, I don't think I need to state here how even the People's Action Party had to move candidates last minute. Your attention is all over the place. But what I would say is that we had made our views quite clear on foreign interference. I understand the minister says that when the statement on Noor Deros could have been clearer. I accept that. I think we can make certain things very clear. But my point is, if we talk about the national interest, if this is so important to the government, there are other ways to deal with it collectively as one Singapore. On the matter of PAS, and I think Minister made some extended comments about PAS. About 1 year ago at this time, we know that PAP Malay MPs went to Malaysia. There was the Malay Action Bureau in particular went to Malaysia, and there was some communication with PAS. And I think in the Petir, the government's, the PAP's propaganda, the PAP's publication outlet, it mentioned that it had, just bear with me a minute while I find this. Yes, here we are. This is, the masthead says, the PAP story told from within. Malaysian politics has evolved. In the past, there was only one dominant party. Now there are multiple Malay parties and those with Malay components. And this is former Malay Muslim Affairs Minister saying, I thought it would be good for party activists to be introduced and build bridges with these parties and personalities. It's an extensive article, and the minister also says, but I thought it would be useful to deploy our Malay activists in a way that would relive the purpose of the Malay, of the MAB. How do we help the party win over the Malay community? Now, I'm not sure what is the party's approach to this matter, and what I would be interested in is, given this relationship that the PAP and PAS seem to have, was there any attempt made by PAP members or intermediaries in private to communicate with PAS and to inform them not to interfere in our elections forthwith? And at the same time, did the government make any intervention or formally raise this matter with the Malaysian counterparts as to not to do this in future? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So on Deros, let's keep the two separate. On Deros, I think listening to Mr. Singh, he agrees that it should have been and could have been clearer. And let's just remember, the person meeting Deros was the vice chairman of the party, a CEC member, very senior leader. He was meeting Deros, together with all the WP Malay candidates. So I think let's just take responsibility for it and agree that the statement that came out was not unequivocal. It should have been clearer, and I think Mr. Singh agrees that it should have been clearer. There should have been a clear rejection of Deros's demands. There should have been a rejection of Deros's support for the Workers' Party's Malay candidates. There should have been a rejection of his support for Mr. Faisal Mana. It wasn't done immediately, and when it was done without a clear rejection. What do we learn from this? I think based on what Mr. Singh agrees, in future, we need to be very aware and we need to be clear when we make our rejections. So I thank him for that. government should be more active, I think, is Mr. Singh's second point. I think we all have to work on this together, but that can only come about if we all agree on the fundamentals. Government issued the statement, MHA. The Prime Minister made an extraordinary move because it was so important. And he came out and he spoke in public during the GE and said this is not acceptable. And I think that then prodded the WP into making clear statements on PAS, but not so much on Deros. Now, on the relationship between the PAP and PAS, sir, there are a number of political parties in Singapore, PAP, WP, SDP, PSP, and Mr. Singh knows that they all have interactions with various political parties around the world. So let's not seek to confuse the issues. This is not an attempt to try and confuse the public. The PAP can reach out to a whole variety of parties, including PAS and UMNO, and around the region in Indonesia and other places. That is part and parcel of understanding what is going on around the world. That is very different from accepting a foreign endorsement of our candidates. If PAS had endorsed the PAP candidates of any race, I think this House, knowing as it does our philosophy, can be sure we would have rejected it immediately. So let's not confuse the issues. Let's stick to what we are talking about here. One is Deros's endorsement of the Workers' Party's Malay candidates, leading clearly into an identity politics situation, and the other, PAS's endorsement of Workers' Party's Malay Muslim candidates. That is what we are talking about. And we are talking about how do you respond to that. So I hope we can agree and move on.
Mr. Singh?
Just a matter of clarification. I think Minister started by referring to meeting Deros, and I mentioned quite clearly during the elections that he gate-crashed a meeting that Mr. Manap was having with someone else. My understanding from Mr. Manap is, Mr. Faisal, I beg your pardon, is that there was no arrangement to meet him specifically. But this is a matter of, this is just a fact by the by. But the points that the Minister has made in terms of not wanting such interference, rejecting individuals who attempt to use identity politics to win votes, I can agree with that. And I think most Singaporeans will agree with that. The point I wish to highlight, and I'm not sure whether the Minister has been unequivocal about it, is when something like this happens, there is an asymmetry of information. The government has a perspective which is far broader than a small political party. And my point is, if it is serious enough, in the Minister's words, for the Prime Minister to take a measure such as stopping campaigning halfway to clarify a point, I don't think it's too difficult to reach out in the national interest to get that clarification also from all political parties as one Singapore. I hope the Minister can consider this in future.
Minister?
So we will certainly consider Mr. Singh's suggestion, but what I would like is a more unequivocal acceptance of responsibility. If there is any asymmetry of information, it is that the Workers' Party had all the information because neither the government nor the PAP met with Mr. Deros. However the meeting took place, Mr. Deros met with 5 of your candidates, including your vice chairman. He said whatever he said. Until today, I don't know what was said. I only know what he reports as having been said. And I know that nothing has been said by the Workers' Party about what transpired, other than that no promises, commitments, or agreements were made. So yes, there is an asymmetry of information, and that is the Workers' Party knows what happened. We don't. We only know what Deros has put up. And I think even with that asymmetry of information, knowing what we did, it strikes us, and it seems to me it will strike anyone that this is not acceptable. And if it's not acceptable, for example, Mr. Singh issued a clear and unequivocal rejection of Pass's interference. He knew enough to say that he is, as Mr. Lau described him, a politician who understands politics. He was able to do that after the Prime Minister called for a clear rejection. He never did that, and the Workers' Party never did that about Deros. I think, let's just say, that's why we waited for the elections to be over, emotions to calm down. We make this statement. As I said, I wasn't going to go into this level of detail. We draw a line. We move forward as one Singaporeans. In future, if these things happen, the framework hopefully is clear enough. We all accept and move ahead. Now, if you want the government to tell you what to do and what not to do in the middle of the elections, the government is also mindful of being seen to interfere with individual political parties. So we need to be mindful of that, because it can be politicized. Maybe Mr. Singh is welcoming of a phone call to say this is not on, but I can imagine a number of other political parties might say, you are trying to threaten me in the middle of a general election. So we need to be very careful. So the statements were clear, but carefully drafted. And that's a MHA ELD statement. And the Prime Minister decided to come out and say it, because this is fundamental for Singapore. So how could it be any clearer? He said it. He said, reject this. Reject identity politics. Reject foreign interference. So we did do. Now, if Mr. Singh is talking about a specific reach out to the Workers' Party, we will think about it. But let's all commit in the first place to saying we all understand under no circumstances is this acceptable, and we will be clear in future.
Mr. Singh?
So I don't intend to repeat myself, just to share that the MHA ELD statement, again, did not refer to Deros, but I want to be, the only time it came up officially from the government was when the Prime Minister brought Noor Deros up specifically. So our statement focused on foreign interference. But as the Prime Minister made his press conference was on the 26th at around noonish, same night, we make our position very clear on needing support from individuals on racial and religious grounds. We don't need that sort of support. So I think that is unequivocal. If the minister wants, I don't think I can be clearer than that. But the substance of what the minister has gone on in his ministerial statement is not objectionable.
I think
Minister?
Mr. Singh is confusing two different issues, sir. The MHA ELD statement talked about foreign interference. It also dealt with a separate issue, religion and politics. In response, the WP statement dealt with religion and politics and said no agreements, commitments, or promises had been made. On PAS, it said something else, and then I've referred to what Mr. Singh said in his doorstop and further at the rally. So let's keep the two separate. Let's not confuse the two. On Deros, MHA ELD statement does talk about religion and politics. It doesn't mention Deros, but it says religion and politics ought not to be mixed. And as I said, the Workers' Party knows. I mean, it's no Deros. They met with him, and he made all these demands. He made all these calls. I think Mr. Singh has said, yeah, it could have been clearer. Instead of just saying no agreements, promises, or commitments, it should have said we reject. his demands. We rejected it when we met him. I don't know. I hope his demands were rejected when there was the meeting. We rejected his demands when we met him. We reject his demands now. This is completely unacceptable. That is all that I'm saying. And I think it is not a very difficult thing to agree to. Let's not confuse that with the past statement. On the past statement, I said it started out little equivocal, then the doorstop, it became clearer, and after the Prime Minister gave his press conference at night, it was quite clear by Mr. Singh. So keep the two separate. The government dealt with the two different issues, both through the MHA-ELD statement, though it didn't mention Deros, and through the Prime Minister's press conference.
Mr. Zhulkarnain Abdul Rahim.
Thank you, sir. I thank the Minister for the statement. I do agree that identity politics would be disastrous for Singapore, especially minorities, and I thank him for the statement. However, listening to Minister's statement, I can't help but notice that some may interpret his statement as suggesting that a particular group or community, in this case the Malay Muslim community, should bear some responsibility for allowing such sentiments to take root in the first place. Is the Honourable Minister suggesting that? Or would he not agree with me that it is in fact part of a broader issue or trend that political actors both here and abroad are taking advantage of our racial or religious sensitivities for their own gain? And if so, it can happen to any communities, any race, any religion, or groups like New Citizens. Thank you.
Minister.
Sir, I think we should be clear. I wasn't singling out any particular community. Our Malay Muslim community during this GE was a victim of these tactics. They didn't ask for these provocations, nor did they support these tactics. They share the same strong commitment as any other community to Singapore's multiracial, multireligious approach. The Malay Muslim community has stayed calm in spite of the deliberate attempts to rile up racial and religious sentiments amongst the community. This time, these people whom I have mentioned targeted the Malay Muslim community. Previously, in other GEs, the Chinese community has been targeted. Those who play identity politics don't just target one community. In fact, one thrust of my speech is that we go down this route of identity politics, everyone will be targeting the Chinese community for obvious reasons. So after the statement by the government issued, Ministry of Home Affairs and Elections Department, and Prime Minister's press conference, many members of the Malay Muslim communities spoke up to affirm their support for a multiracial Singapore. In every society, there will be an attempt to draw invidious comparisons to mobilize different communities. As I've said in my ministerial statement, we have seen this in many countries, and that is what was being tried in this general elections, to divide Singaporeans. The attempts included the attempts by PAS. And we can see how societies are getting increasingly divided. So let us continue to stay firm to our principles and avoid the pull of identity politics. But certainly, it's not the Malay Muslim community that is targeted. They are the victims.
Mr. Xie Yao Quan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the Minister for reminding us all of the absolutely fundamental principles with regard to identity politics. But I also like to ask the minister to clarify if he is also saying that it would be wrong for any political party to appeal to voters based on what the party can offer to any specific community? Or is he also saying that it would be wrong for an individual to question whether the government has done enough for any community or to demand the government to do more for a specific community? Thank you.
Minister?
Thank you, sir. Sir, I think it's perfectly acceptable for political parties, candidates, politicians to say that their policies will benefit a specific community. In fact, if you look at my ministerial statement, one of the key points is that this government's policies over the last 60 years have benefited the minorities, Malays, Indians, and others. And that if we had followed the norms set in other places in the world, minorities would have been in a far worse position. So it's entirely possible for a PAP politician to go and say, the PAP is the best party to protect minority interests, or protect Malay Muslim interests, to protect Indian interests. It's perfectly possible to say that. And it's perfectly possible for someone to counter and say that's not correct. And if you look at the Malay Muslim community, it's been a long-standing commitment of the PAP government to support and uplift the Malay Muslim community. It dates back to pre-independence, to the days of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. And successive prime ministers have reiterated this fundamental commitment. That is why our constitution recognizes the special position of Malays. It states that it shall be the responsibility of the government to protect, safeguard, support, foster, promote their political, educational, religious, economic, social, and cultural interests, and the Malay language. So it's entirely acceptable to say or contradict that one of the government's key policies is the upliftment of the Malay Muslim community. There is nothing wrong with advocating ways to advance a particular community or discussing legitimate community concerns. But when we advocate for the concerns of the Malay Muslim community or any other community, we must ensure that our advocacy is conducted responsibly in a manner that upholds Singapore's unity. So just as the government's policies benefit the Malay Muslim community, they must also benefit all other Singaporeans. And there is a distinction between advocating for the legitimate needs of a community versus pitting the different racial and religious groups against each other, or calling on Singaporeans to vote along racial and religious lines. The latter is what causes division. Take Deros as an example. He's entitled to his opinions, ideas, and suggestions, regardless of how absurd these were. But what was troubling was his call for Singaporean Muslims, Malay Muslims, to vote along racial and religious lines for specific candidates. As I said in my speech, if you go down this route, if you go down the route that Mr. Daman Huri has advocated and Deros is advocating, who will benefit? The largest groups will be the ones that all political parties will cater to. And who will suffer? Not the Chinese. And that will be the road to Singapore's ruin, because ultimately the Chinese will also suffer, because we will not remain a country in the way we are. Everyone will suffer. So when raising issues that relate to particular racial or religious community, the tone matters, the setting matters. We have to adopt a give and take approach, avoid a zero-sum mentality, avoid casting every issue as an ideological battle where no compromises can be made, Otherwise, we risk reducing our common space and inviting pushback from other communities. And never insult or belittle any racial or religious group or attempt to pit certain groups against others. Thank you, sir.
Ms. Hazlina Abdul Halim, Mr. Kenneth Tiong, and Dr. Charlene Chen have seen your hands. I'll come to you next.
Thank you, Speaker. I thank the coordinating minister for reminding us the importance of believing how we serve everyone and that this is a Singapore for all. And I also appreciate members' appreciation of peace and harmony being important tenets that we commit to. I would like to see clarifications from the minister on two fronts. One is when and one is how. The minister cited Mr. Noor Deros and Mr. Daman Huri as an illustration of attempts to bring race and religion into electoral politics. Now, while the minister has mentioned earlier that he was looking for the earliest opportunity to bring this up and also was mindful about being seen as threatening smaller political parties, could the minister help us understand why are we raising these concerns now in particular and not back then? And furthermore, what again warrants revisiting it today? Was that also above and beyond incidents that we recently saw with regards to, for example, Masjid Al-Istiqamah? Now, on the how, expanding a little bit on the earlier honourable member's question, as well as Deputy Speaker's question, which is about hesitance. I wanted to highlight that minority voices may hesitate to speak up on discrimination. And so, how can we as Singapore ensure a safer space for us to be able to do that, to ensure that Singaporeans can continue to have difficult, tough, but meaningful conversation on race and religion, in particular by taking the stand of preserving mutual respect when doing so, and ensuring that it's not misused or not allowed for exploitation, especially due to external forces. Thank you.
Minister.
So on why now, I have explained. During the elections, the government issued a statement through MHA and ELD. The Prime Minister spoke as Prime Minister. It's the highest level of intervention, and he said what our principles ought to be, and he set out and asked political parties to make clear their position, and that had some impact. After that, the President's speech mentioned it, the importance. Then the Prime Minister again spoke during the debate on the President's speech. As I said in my ministerial statement, why are we saying this, repeating this over and over again? Because it's fundamental. Without an agreement on this basic point, Singapore will not survive. It's existential, which is why I have pitched my speech as one that I hope all sides can agree on as Singaporeans and learn from for the future. That is very important. How do we deal with such incidents in future? I think responsibility means doing that well. Now, after that, after the Prime Minister's intervention in the President's debate, this is the earliest opportunity. This is an important issue. This is the earliest opportunity. We decided that it should be dealt with in Parliament, and I'm speaking in Parliament at the earliest possible opportunity. So that answers why now. On the incident relating to pork, the items of meat being sent to various mosques, the matter is under investigation. You know that somebody has been charged. Our members would have heard me say we take this very seriously. It's not acceptable. And we will deal with it very stiffly in terms of the charging position that we take and decisions that are taken from the government side, then the Attorney General chambers will have to independently look at it. And what happens in court, that's for the courts to decide.
But it's not why you're speaking to.
But I'm not speaking today because of the incidents relating to the mosques, just in case members get that impression. The sequence for my speech today is, as I said, after the president's speech, this is the first occasion, and it is a speech that seeks to set out the framework and fundamentals, first to remind ourselves, and second, to guide us for the future, all political parties, so that we accept what is precious in Singapore and we say we will protect it. Now, on safe spaces for minorities, or for anyone really, I mentioned it in my speech. Now, there are various fora, there are young people, unions, other associations, grassroots, a variety of formats where these issues can be raised, safe spaces. Nobody pulls punches on the substance of things, but they are respectful of each other. Now, beyond that, if people want to organize fora on their own, they are welcome to do so and discuss these issues. All we ask is, first of all, don't attack other religions or races, because that will breach the law, and we will enforce the law. 2, be respectful and take the approach of give and take. Because if you push with only your views, then others will push with only their views. Remember that we are in a multiracial, multi-religious society, so approach it with common sense and give and take. And within that framework, it doesn't mean that you must accept discrimination, you must accept racism. You are entitled to bring it up. And in fact, recently, legislation has been put in place that protects minorities and others from, having their employment terminated for the wrong reasons, including that of race or religion. So, the government will continue doing it in terms of protecting everyone and trying to create a bigger common space. It's also individual responsibility, but my speech should not be understood as saying, you cannot speak about race or religion or discrimination or racism. The way to deal with those is to speak about it, but do so, have a care, do so sensibly.
Mr. Kenneth Tiong.
One clarification. The minister has set clear bars for responding to foreign influence: immediacy, categorical rejection, and explicit disavowal, regardless of ambiguity or delay. Will the minister now apply those same standards to Michael Petraeus, the Polish national whose Critical Spectator platform has published racially charged commentary on Singapore politics, including a piece titled, quote, "WP abandons Muslim voters, turns to the Chinese," end quote. His platform was previously taken down from Facebook for policy violations. He continues to try to influence our politics from his foreign perch, this time favoring the PAP. Will the PAP categorically reject and disavow his support today, just as the minister demanded that the Workers' Party do so within 24 hours?
I thank
Minister?
the member for this question because different people ask this. I think it arises from a misunderstanding of the law. There are a variety of people who have commentaries running on Singapore. The Economist comments on politics in Singapore. The New York Times runs articles on Singapore. The South China Morning Post runs articles on Singapore. And Michael Petraeus is not the only person who is a foreigner who runs commentaries, sometimes for the government, sometimes against the government, sometimes favoring the Workers' Party. We can cite various people who favor the Workers' Party who are foreigners. That doesn't amount to, within the definition, interfering with our local politics. If we took that definition, every day we'll be doing nothing but taking down and trying to object to various international journals. Hundreds of articles appear, hundreds of posts appear. It's not the government's business to be going and censoring all of this. And nor is it going to be possible. But if there is a specific attempt to interfere in the elections, and if Critical Spectator has put out any such post, I would welcome Mr. Tiong to send it to us, and we will take a look at it. As far as I know, there isn't one, but I could be mistaken because I don't follow his posts. And nothing has been sent to me.
Mr. Tiong?
I thank the Minister for clarifying that the PAP will not be categorically rejecting Michael Petraeus' actions.
Ask the member not to put words in my mouth. I would say, I would invite the Workers' Party to tell me, would they take the position that we ought to be censoring and objecting to every article on politics in Singapore by any foreigner? And would that apply to all the international journals? If Mr. Tiong's position is that, and that we should similarly take down all posts by any foreigner, and if we put forward legislation to that effect, if the Workers' Party would support it, then we'll talk about it.
Ms. Hazlina, you have a further clarification? Go ahead.
Thank you, Speaker. I think it's important to recognize the fact that Singapore is for Singapore, and that's why we're all here today. I was reflecting on the Minister's speech on identity and what it means. It's just a small part of what we can do and what we have to offer and who we serve. I wanted to clarify the point about the Malay community rising above targeted intentions during hustings and actually really seeing the unity of Singapore coming together and taking all of our identities as strengths and really serving for Singapore for all. Not so much feeling victimized, but realizing that while there could have been targets or attempts, it's really about coming together for what's best. Thank you.
Minister?
Sorry, can I invite the MP to maybe repeat the question because I missed part of it? I'm sorry.
Ms. Hazlina?
Thank you, Minister. It was more of a clarification to state that while there were potentially attempts to make the Malay community victims during hustings, falling for identity politics, we, as a community, I believe, rose above it and took the point of really coming together and realizing their identity is a strength. So that was a point of clarification on not falling victim, but wanting to rise above it while targeted. Would the Minister see in the same light?
Yes, I will agree with that description, and that is in fact what I said as well, maybe not as elegantly as the member. Thank you.
Dr. Charlene Chen?
Speaker, sir, I'd like to thank the Minister for his ministerial statement. I'd just like to say that Tampines has a very diverse yet mutually respectful community. And our residents in Tampines would agree that Singapore's survival depends on our unity. And I believe that harmony comes from confidence and trust, and sometimes not avoiding difficult conversations. So beyond calling out and effecting the law in response to potential attempts to influence voting behavior along racial and religious lines, how can we strengthen public awareness and civic education to help our Singaporeans recognize and reject such messages so that they do not become victims of politically motivated individuals? Thank you.
Minister?
So thank you. I would say that two, maybe three parts to this. The first is to do what we have done up to now, eschew race-based politics in the mainstream, do our best, and what we do every weekend, go down to the ground as MPs, have events which bring in all the different races together, continue with all the policies that you see in the annex, including the ethnic integration policy, our races mixed in integrated schools, other areas, and continue to make sure our legal framework protects everyone and give everyone the confidence. That is important. And of course, everyone must feel, regardless of race, language, or religion, that they are participating in the economic progress, in the social progress of Singapore. Now, the second is when there are attempts to play the race card or the religious card, I think we have to be clear and we have to stand firm, which is why I said, it would have been far easier for me not to make this statement and just move on. But I think something good is achieved in setting out a clear framework and heartening to hear Mr. Singh say, yes, we could have been clear. We could have been clearer on Deros. On timing, to me, every day matters. He says he disagrees, but I'm sure on reflection, he will agree that during campaign, it should just have been immediate, the moment it comes out, the response. So I think we have achieved some degree of common ground, and we hope that through statements of this nature, serious discussions in Parliament, our understanding increases. Every member of Parliament here goes away with a better understanding of the framework. You will be able to talk to your grassroots leaders, to your residents, and also put the points across. This is what matters in Singapore. And going forward, we have to continue with that. There will always be attempts to divide us, both from outside and from within, and it's up to us, each one of us, to be standing strong against it, and essentially our society has to be given the immunity. Immunity comes from these discussions. And when the leader of the opposition stands up and says he agrees, then I think the immunity increases. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Andre Loh.
Thank you, Speaker. I have one clarification for the Minister. So in his speech, he referred to one of the policy pillars being our reasonable, calibrated approach to discussing such views in public, referring to religious issues. Now, I want to refer to the Minister's citing of the Institute of Policy Studies 2024 survey on racial and religious harmony, and the headline statistic in Annex C, where it stated that 65.4% of respondents rated Singapore's racial and religious harmony as high or very high, and this is on the uptrend from the last time the survey was run. Now, of course, this is a heartening statistic, but there is some nuance to it. That same report highlighted that there was a perception gap between what the Chinese majority felt versus our minorities, quite a significant one, as well as a perception gap between the younger generation and the older generation. The below 35s, the 35s and below, felt that racial and religious harmony was worse than the older respondents. So my clarification for the Minister is, would the Minister consider recalibrating that reasonable and calibrated approach that the government has taken to racial and religious harmony in Singapore, given these findings? Maybe it's perhaps not working for certain demographics, such as our younger Singaporeans, who may feel that safe spaces, as my fellow member referred to, can be more open, because if you're constantly wary of tripping over whether it's actual legislation or perhaps unseen OB markers, perhaps these conversations might not be had in the most open and respectful manner.
Minister.
Thank the member for the clarification. As I listened to him, and I think this is a point he might have made in his maiden speech as well, all these fora that the government talks about are curated. They are not quote-unquote real fora. Real fora is where people come and they can speak whatever they like. We have many examples of such real fora. Look around the world. The United States, you have such fora. Are we colonized in our minds so much that we have to continue to hark back to these theories which have failed all around the world. What's happened in the US? What's happened in the UK, where they have all these fora that you refer to? What's happened in France? What's happened in Germany? Go look at the statistics. The far right in Germany is getting into power. The far right in France is now getting into power too. Because when you allow such free-flowing expressions without any kind of legal framework, what's going to happen? Identity politics. What will be the identity politics in Singapore? I'm Chinese, you are Chinese, vote for me. Why you want to vote for that Malay or that Indian? So you have GRC systems. You have Maintenance of Racial Harmony Act. Why don't we look at what we have and objectively ask, is it better than what is there elsewhere? That's the first question. Is our situation better than what you see in the United States, in Europe, in many Asian countries? Yes, no. If the answer is yes, what has worked? Something has worked. I have listed the things that have worked. Now, is it perfect? No. I said it's work in progress. Perhaps it will always be work in progress because of the deep-seated human emotions. And I think it is very pertinent then to say, how are the demographics working out? Is there a difference? Are the younger people less accepting? Is there an issue? I think that is something that should be looked at. But the answer then is not to jump immediately to models which have failed miserably everywhere else. The answer is to say, how do we reach these people? How do we get them to come and talk? Now, these so-called curated fora, all it means is a safe space is created, different people with different views come together, moderators come in, they discuss. It's hard-hitting, and on substance, nobody pulls their punches, but they are respectful. And as I said earlier, there is nothing to stop Mr. Low or anyone else from organizing more of such on their own terms, as long as you don't insult any race or religion, and hopefully you will encourage people to be more respectful. But the answer is not to do away with the Maintenance of Racial Harmony Act or Maintenance of Religious Harmony Act. That's a false solution. That simply means that you're colonized in your minds. I'm not saying Mr. Low is, but I frequently read, from often foreigners telling us, advising us on how we should run our country, and among that would be, you shouldn't have all these laws. I say, look at yourself first before you prescribe to me.
Mr. Saktiandi Supaat.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a clarification with Minister, but before that, I would like to thank the Minister for his speech, where he mentioned the historical sort of story fact that the Malay is being offered land back in the 1960s, and none has actually gone over during the 1960s. I think that sort of brings out the fact about our older generation of the Malay community being part of Singapore identity going forward. So I thank the Minister for highlighting that. Mr. Speaker, my clarification is in relation to what I think the discussion earlier. I've been hearing the issue about what LO has mentioned. I find it hard to believe that the LO is suggesting, or somewhat suggesting, that Mr. Vice Chairman, Mr. Faisal Manap, did not know who Mr. Deros is and what were the implications of his endorsement, given that his reach is quite significant online, and his positions have been quite clear. And I think it's on both sides, the PAP MPs, PAP Malay MPs, and of course the WP Malay MPs would know Mr. Deros back then. So I think my clarification is somewhat related to that in some ways in terms of the guidelines and framework, Minister. Can you share a bit more about the guidelines and framework pre And I think because the situation happened during the heat of the general elections, how can we be more clearer going forward in terms of how the guidelines and framework that you've shared? And I think I truly support the fact that having a very clear guideline and framework, as you have shared during this ministerial statement, will go a long way in bringing a bit more clear direction into how we should deal in relation to race and religion going forward. Thank you, Minister.
Minister?
So on the points relating to Mr. Singh and the Workers' Party and Mr. Faisal Manap, I think I've said what I needed to say. I think listening carefully to Mr. Singh, he doesn't say Mr. Faisal Manap didn't know. He doesn't say that the Workers' Party Malay Muslim candidates didn't know. So anyway, it's obvious that they know about Mr. Deros. They went to meet Deros. What was discussed, as I said, we don't know. Deros put out his posts. I think we have talked about it. I think Mr. Singh agrees it should have been responded to clearly. I think we leave it at that. Now, in terms of in terms of the framework and guidelines, there is one set of hard framework and guidelines in the law. Then there is common sense and the way we have applied, and frankly, it hasn't been too bad in Singapore. Most people have kept to that framework of trying to achieve consensus, trying to achieve a common ground and increase the common space. And in my speech, I've given some indicators. You don't need to pull back on the substance, but remember, it's a multiracial society. You have demands, others have demands too. Think about it, and then see what is the give and take approach. But that doesn't mean you ought to allow yourselves to be discriminated against. You shouldn't agree or keep quiet when there is racism. But in terms of demands for the community, what do you want? What can others ask? Remember, in a democracy, everyone can demand. So what is reasonable? How do we mediate these? And if you leave it to a free-for-all, the domination will be by the majority community. So we need politicians to be actually in there as leaders to try and give a framework and bring good sense to these discussions and guide. And not just politicians, but community leaders, religious leaders. So in Singapore, a lot of that goes on, the constant linkage and interactions between government, community leaders, religious leaders, MPs on the ground. That is Singapore's another secret sauce. That's why we succeed so far. But as Mr. Loh points out, some of the statistics for the younger generation are slightly different. We have to look at that. We look at that, but there are many reasons for it, amongst which is the role of the internet and external influences which are coming in, and people now forming tribes on the net amongst themselves and not forming relationships and communities on the ground. And therefore, it becomes more difficult to reach out to them and get them to buy into shared values, because their shared values are with their own net communities. That is also happening. So these studies are going on. And also, as regards the Malay community, and as Ms. Hazlinda said, and you have alluded to, I said they were the victims, meaning they were being the targets, but they were bigger and they rose. They didn't allow themselves to become victims. They rose above it, and they dealt with it.
Mr. Singh?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I did not intend to participate further in this exchange, but as Member Saktiandi seems to suggest, I shared publicly the circumstances which relate to how Mr. Noor Deros met up with the Workers' Party candidates, certain Workers' Party candidates. Mr. Noor Deros himself, in a post on the 6th of May, says he was invited by an ustaz, delegated by Mr. Faisal Manab. That's his, those are his views. This idea that, just like the minister says, we meet with people from all walks of life. I believe there was a Channel News Asia article shortly after the elections. Ong Yi Kang Chi Ong Tat have no dealings with Fu Chien gang members Su Hai Jin, says press secretaries. And it quotes, the quote is, as ministers, they meet a diverse range of people at various events and gatherings. Key point to note is, Mr. Noor Deros has some views. He wants to advance a certain view of society. The Workers' Party rejected it.
Minister?
I think we need to be very clear, sir. Workers' Party never rejected Deros's views. I think never rejected his endorsement, never rejected him saying, vote for Mr. Faisal Manab over Minister Masagos. Workers' Party rejected passes overtures and endorsements through Mr. Singh's rally speech. On Deros, the most that was said was that we made no commitments, promises, or agreements. And then during subsequent doorstops, Mr. Singh made various statements about Deros being a nobody. But Mr. Singh can let me know if ever there was a rejection of Deros's endorsement of the Workers' Party's candidates. A clear rejection.
Mr. Singh?
Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to go beyond what we said during the elections. That would be correct, because that was what was said. But the point that I made earlier on before this exchange is, it was quite unequivocal, in my understanding, by the time the matter came to a head at the Tampines rally. The statements that were made, I think it was very clear where we stood on involvement of race or religion in politics. Now, if somebody comes along and says, we are going, I am of a certain race, and the Workers' Party should support us because we are taking certain identity politics type of arguments forward, we will reject those, as we have to.
Minister?
I'm glad to hear that, except that it was not done for this election. Deros's endorsement on the basis of race and religion was not rejected during the last GE. We hope that going forward, it will be rejected unequivocally and immediately. What was done was to say, we don't know who he is, he's a nobody, and we've made no promises, agreements, or commitments, which is very different from a rejection. And Mr. Singh knows what a rejection sounds like, because he was clear and unequivocal after the Prime Minister called for a clear rejection. He was rejected passes endorsement, but he never rejected, neither the Workers' Party nor Mr. Singh ever rejected Deros's endorsement of the Workers' Party's Malay candidates, nor, quite crucially, Deros's endorsement of Mr. Faisal Manab for Tampines.
Mr. Singh?
Mr. Speaker, I just want to clarify this for the record, and I think it's important that I do so. And this is an extract of a question that was asked to me during the doorstop, and the minister can take a view whether the Workers' Party rejected what Mr. Deros was proposing. And in my view, I believe we did. The question was, we saw the post that WP has put up this morning. This is from the journalists, regarding foreign interference and regarding the WP Muslim candidate meeting with the Malaysian activist Noor Deros. That's wrong, he's Singaporean. So could you walk us through some details of the meeting? When did the meeting take place? And then it goes on. Was it part of the consideration that WP fielded Mr. Faisal Manab in Tampines to meet with this? Tampines MP Masagos, is it a coincidence that he's the Muslim Affairs Minister in this area? Was the meeting part of the consideration following? My reply, no, absolutely not. Let me add to what has been already shared by way of the media statement this morning. What had happened was that in one of our Muslim committee members in one of the mosques in Al Junaid wanted to speak to Mr. Faisal and to the Malay members of the party. And what happened was that the meeting was supposed to take place with some ulama, some senior Malay Muslim religious leaders. There was no indication that this individual would be joining in the meeting. So when the meeting started, he was there, and my understanding is he had this list of demands. And of course, as our statement makes it quite clear, there's no situation of, I quote, if the WP pushes forward this agenda, I will support you, unquote. I'm sorry, we don't work politics like that in Singapore. We don't work politics like that in the Workers' Party. People have views. I think government officials, even ministers, meet with various members of religious groups in Singapore. So do we. And if this gentleman thinks that his advocacy will lead to the issues being brought up by the Workers' Party, I think he's sadly mistaken. So in my view, that's a rejection of what Mr. Deros is trying to put forth. And I don't intend to repeat myself, but in the broad approach that the minister is suggesting going forward in terms of ensuring that religion, race is not involved or it doesn't mix with politics, we can agree with that. And I think most sensible Singaporeans, and the vast majority of Singaporeans, I would add, would agree with that. The ministerial statement today was about race or religion. I want to pick up on a second point which Mr. Loh was alluding to. I believe after the last elections, the ones before in GE 2020, a minister himself came out to say that an older generation of Singaporeans has a certain approach with regard to race and religion, and a younger generation take a different approach. Now, can I confirm with the minister, is there a new framework that the government is considering in view of this difference of approach in addressing race or religion issues? Can we, for example, see more in safe spaces or a different style of trying to deal with race or religion issues, particularly for the reasons that the minister states, the nature of social media and how a certain tribalism can develop in society?
Minister?
There are two different parts. I think Mr. Singh also knows what he said about PAS, when there was a clear and categorical rejection of PAS's endorsement. So I don't want to keep repeating myself. When it came to PAS, after the PM called for it, there was a clear rejection of the endorsement. We unequivocally reject, and we don't need their support. When it came to Noor Deros, it was all about, well, it doesn't mean that we are going to carry on with his policies. It doesn't mean who is he, and so on. But the crucial point is, it's very easy to have said, we reject. Anyway, I think the point has been made, but more important is what's for the future. Now, as regards ways of engaging, what I would say is, what we have done so far has worked very well. At the same time, to say that we have achieved the best possible way of doing things is a route to disaster, because you need to be constantly alert to changing circumstances. And we read the surveys just as Mr. Singh does and Mr. Loh does and others do. We all have our different interpretations. I don't necessarily agree with all the interpretations he puts forward, but on many issues, demographically, there are different viewpoints. And it's important to analyze them carefully, not jump to conclusions. What are the reasons for these diverse viewpoints? On some issues, the younger people are more nationalistic and more Singaporean compared with older generations. And we find that younger Singaporeans are less prone to foreign influence compared with some demographics in the older generation. So there are these variances, and what influences are working on them. Often we find that these are influences from outside of Singapore. So there are a variety of things that the government is doing, and also it's constantly analyzing. But we always welcome ideas on how we can do this better. And if they are workable, we will consider.
After 2.5 hours, I believe all clarifications sought have been addressed by the Minister. Order.